I was a person always on the go who loved to write, loved to meet and learn new things about people. And so, yeah, it seemed like a natural fit for me.
There's been some movement here. CAL FIRE has actually been doing water drops directly over our head, and one of the more recent airdrops was to where you see that smoke there down the road. So they are keeping a very close eye on some of the hot spots.
I was a TV news reporter in San Francisco, 2 months from getting married, and then my whole world came crashing down on me when what I thought was going to be a simple doctor's appointment turned into a cancer diagnosis in 24 hours. I felt really, really alone, incredibly depressed. I'd never felt such darkness. I really lost my identity, all sense of who I was, and I started beating myself up too for not having realized sooner what all those symptoms were, the red flags, and what they were trying to tell me. And the hardest part about cancer wasn't, even though they were very hard, the chemo, the side effects, and even, going down this dark spiral of thinking about dying. And if you can just keep watching, you're gonna get access to two incredible top lymphoma specialists, these doctors who share why there's growing hope for us and for patients. Hi, my name is Stephanie Trump. I was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I went through about 600 hours of chemo treatment back in 2017. Yeah, so how did this all start? I was, as I said, a reporter, very active. So being super fatigued, I just, attributed it to the job. I'm really tired. I know this is beyond tired, but you know what? I just really haven't been getting good sleep. So that's fine. I was also very bloated. Like I woke up in the morning and my face was like kind of swollen. And then as the day went on, it would narrow down. And then finally, the last straw, the reason why I finally went to a doctor's was I started coughing and it wasn't a lot of coughing. It was like once or twice, but it was from the gut. It was really bizarre. So I was like, okay, this is really odd. And I wasn't really good at going to the doctor, but I finally did. I remember very clearly, kind of was like very light, kind of like, why are you here? You're fine. Then she felt around my collarbone and her expression completely changed. Her demeanor darkened and she said, you know what, let's get blood work just in case. And she said I needed 2 ultrasounds, but what I found out was I would have to wait 3 weeks, I think, or something like that for the ultrasounds. And being the type A person that I was, the very next morning, I walked to get an x-ray because I learned that's first come, first serve. A few hours later, I got a call when I finally was like, oh, this is actually very real. They said, we need to do an emergency CT scan with contrast. No idea what they were talking about. But I did finally call my husband and sister and I said, don't worry about it. It's all fine. But just in case, I'm letting you know. They were by my side within the half hour. We were waiting for the results. They fed me ice cream, tried to distract me with TV. But around 5 o'clock, I think it was that day. So this was 24 hours after my initial doctor's visit. I got the call from this doctor and she said, I'm so sorry, Stephanie, it's lymphoma. And I just remember feeling really numb. I just like broke into tears. I couldn't control it. I was very confused. How could this be? What did I do wrong? What am I supposed to do now? I spent a week in the hospital. This was actually a really hard time, was just trying to get the answers of what was going on. Scan after scan, biopsy after biopsy. And finally, I got the diagnosis of stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, the most common aggressive growing form of diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And I would learn that the treatment would be something called dose-adjusted REPOC, really, which was just, okay, you're going to need to have infusions around the clock for 5.5 days, 6 times. And it was really hard. 600 hours of chemo, immunotherapy, bringing a pump home, sleeping with it, showering with it, going to the bathroom with it. Super difficult. The hardest part about this was not actually related to the treatment, and I will share more at the end of this video, but I really want to get to the point of a really important message, which is if you or someone you know has been diagnosed with cancer, I want to say, yes, I understand how scary it is, how it can be paralyzing. And I know for some, it's like, just give me a plan of action. But the most important thing I've learned after talking with hundreds of patients now, the most important is self advocacy, which really can be as simple as knowing that you can ask your doctor a question and then asking him or her a question. I started the patient story to help people with this, including conversations with top cancer specialists, top doctors, and presenting the information to all of my fellow non medical people because we deserve to know about the latest treatments and that it's free and that we can actually understand it. So, again, these options may not be for us, but we should be able to ask our medical teams about it, especially because there's so much changing. So, this is a little taste of that conversation happening for non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is the most common blood cancer diagnosed here in the US. This is following the biggest global conference for blood cancers and diseases and disorders in the world called ASH, where the doctors discussed many different conditions and cancers, including diffuse large B cell lymphoma, my diagnosis, and also the most common slow growing form of non Hodgkin lymphoma, which is called follicular lymphoma. Two of the top docs talked to us, Dr. Andy Evans from Rutgers Cancer Institute of New Jersey and Dr. Tyson Phillips from City of Hope in LA. And so, just to set the stage, the reason why this is so important is because there are lots of people who aren't as lucky as I was. I responded to that first line of treatment, so it was really hard, but I have had no evidence of disease since. Amazing. For too many people, they either never like respond to treatment during that initial time that it's given, or they do respond and then they relapse, meaning it comes back within a year of finishing treatment. And that is a really hard situation. And for a long time, those people didn't have options, right? And so, whatever is being studied to help them, people eventually are trying to get them closer to newly diagnosed people, with hopes that the treatments that are being unearthed are not only better for survival and outlook, but also better quality of life. And side effects have been terrible with chemoimmunotherapy. I experienced it. And so, setting the stage, again, one of the biggest changes, for instance, for the diffuse large B cell crowd was an approval of something called pola-R-CHP, which was adding polatuzumab, which is an antibody drug conjugate, and taking out the O and R-CHOP, which has been pristine, used to be called Oncovin as the brand name, which is why the O. That was approved, this new sort of regimen in 2023 by the FDA after a clinical trial found 27% reduction in the risk of disease progression or death compared with R-CHOP. So here are the docs explaining more of that.
It garnered, to your point, FDA approval after a phase 3 randomized trial. That acronym for the trial was called POLARIX. And so, again, sorry to belabor on all the acronyms, but it's pola-R-CHP, CHP. And I would say it's broken through. Now, is it used in all patients? I think that's open for discussion. It's FDA approved for all patients with higher risk. You have to have a certain clinical risk score called the IPI, 2 and above. And if you have that, it is FDA approved for your disease. And so it's definitely a breakthrough. There's no way around it.
The Polarix study invigorated, I would say, the field to actually explore more options to improve the frontline setting. Because I think after so many negative studies, we had hit a point where there was very little interest in exploring a way to sort of improve our job. So
now, some of the biggest attention is being paid to the space of immunotherapy. The first big sort of recent advancement there started with CAR T cell therapy. The FDA approved CAR T cell therapy for diffuse large B cell in October 2017 and for follicular lymphoma in March of 2021 by approving something called Axicell. So, what, Dr. Evans, is CAR T cell therapy?
This is, we know what's one of the most powerful anti-cancer agents are your own immune system, in particular your T cells, T as in Tom. And And we don't know why, but in some cancer patients, lymphoma patients, they're not doing what they're supposed to. And so, what CAR T cell really is filtering out part of those immune cells, your T cells, and sending them to a company. And over about a 3 to 4, sometimes 5 week period, they're re engineering it, really doing two things. They're actually transfecting an antibody. So you're kind of making a B cell to tell it where to go when you put it back in. And then you, in some ways, you kind of supercharge it or you activate it. So when you re inject it, it's a one time treatment several weeks later. It not only rapidly expands, but hopefully it goes the supercharged T cell with the CD19 attached to it wherever the lymphoma is in the body.
Okay, so there's that. And then most recently, something called bispecific antibodies came onto the scene, or bispecifics for short. And just by the way, I get it. It's like these are super technical terms. And, there may be sort of this like, I don't even want to know about it. But once you start getting used to talking about it a little bit, it really isn't that bad. So the first bispecific approved was for follicular lymphoma in the non-Hodgkin lymphoma space in December 2022 with something called mosunetuzumab. And then in May of 2023, the FDA approved epcoritamab, which was the first bispecific approved for DLBCL. All right, so Dr. Evans, what are bispecifics?
Similar in concept in that it's the immune system, but it's off the shelf, not on one of my bookshelves, but in the pharmacy. And it's off the shelf treatment. It's really the way to think about it most simply as a double antibody. And so, what are these double antibodies? It's a CD20, which interestingly is rituximab. So you would say, well, if rituximab in most patients stop working, why would this? Is because the second antibody is CD3. And so when it's off the shelf and injected, what it does is, yes, CD20 goes to where the lymphoma is, but the CD3 has T cells attached to it. So it delivers the patient's own endogenous or in vivo T cells to where the lymphoma is. And it's remarkable. I mean, I've had a multitude of patients, as I'm sure Dr. Phillips has, where CAR T is given, it doesn't work, and we don't honestly know why, but we're thrilled when it happens. And then you get bispecifics, and the lymphoma completely goes away. This is someone who's already failed regular CD20, single antibody, CD19 CAR, and then just a different immunotherapy for one reason or another really is effective.
Okay, great. So, a quick summary. CAR T has more real world evidence because it was approved before bispecifics. But there's also more hope that the bispecifics will be more accessible to more patients, especially those who may not have had access to going to a major academic hospital like the one that I went to. And so these developments have showed, again, not just great results for efficacy and survival from those clinical trials originally, and not for everyone, but enough for the FDA to give approval. But it's also great news in terms of side effects, right? With my chemoimmunotherapy cocktail, I just had a like terrible, terrible time. Mouth sores, severe GI issues, major fatigue, like the kind where it's like, oh my God, it's going to take me 5 minutes instead of 5 seconds to go up a flight of stairs. And of course, the hair loss. And it does make sense when you think about how chemotherapy works. And here's Dr. Phillips with more on that.
I think the easiest way to sort of compare chemotherapy to some of these other treatments is, I go back to the military where chemo is basically like napalm. I mean, it's going to kill anything that is growing rapidly because that's what it's designed to do. It isn't specific for anything one way or the other. A lot of these targeted treatments, such as bispecifics and then obviously CAR T, are more so focused on directing your treatment toward the problem, which is in essence a malignant B cell.
Okay, and lastly, as a preview, one more key question I asked the docs was how are you helping your patients understand which way to go with treatments given just how many options there are now?
How effective is it? Meaning not just that initial response, but obviously we want it to be stable, stay in remission. Of course, number two, or 1A, 1B, is how's it tolerated? And if it is as good or better tolerated, fantastic. If there's some different or unique toxicities, well, is it balanced out by the efficacy? And then maybe 3 or 1C, we think about cost of care. We want to make sure it can be affordable for patients. And at the end of the day, whatever is approved down the road that builds upon R-CHOP and Pola-R-CHP, it's all good news. And we'll just have to kind of patient by patient make those smart, informed, personalized decisions.
All right, thanks so much to Dr. Evans, Dr. Phillips. For the full discussion, which really goes over so much more and is free, just click on this link right here. You can also get access to all our content focused on non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And by the way, we also have other communities as well. There's no spam, no sharing of your contact info, and it is always free. So I hope what you're walking away with is there's so much hope on the horizon. There's so much research going on, a lot changing the outlook and prognosis for so many people. And it starts with advocating for yourself or your loved ones because you deserve that. Again, knowing that it may not be right for you, these options or these studies, the knowledge itself, being able to ask those questions is so powerful. And remember also, you are not alone. There were so many dark days for me. In that first hospital week that I had, where we didn't have any answers, I tried a lot. I tried humor, I tried dancing.
Puppet or color.
And I also tried breaking out of the hospital. That was actually a genius idea from my partner in crime, my husband, Tim. But most importantly, the hardest part, I was talking about that before, was learning not just how to deal with, cancer, chemo, side effects, am I going to die, but was actually to sit still. Like, how do I do that? I was so used to, as like a type A person, like adding to my calendar, moving, being very busy. That busyness helped me feel productive and purposeful. But with all of the chemo immunotherapy in my body was doing a lot of work trying to fight the cancer, and being forced to be still, and that in that silence was really the first time I had to think about who I was and what I wanted in life. And it was really difficult, especially as, again, such a go person. But I ended up learning so much about myself and getting to meet amazing people through this work. So I learned to give myself grace. I hope you can too. And remember, there is so much going on. Don't forget, you can speak up for yourself because you are the most important. Take good care.